Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. New Hampshire's 1st congressional district is known for its close, hard-fought races. Democrat Chris Pappas won in 2018 by making inroads in Republican strongholds. This cycle, he faces a challenge from a GOP candidate with very close ties to the Trump administration. Bottom line, as usual, nothing comes easy for an incumbent in CD1. Congressman Pappas is our guest this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Adam. It's great to be with you.
Well, let's start right in with the president calling off negotiations on the pandemic relief bill, but then saying he wants standalone bills. One, was a deal close in your sense when he pulled the plug? And two, is what he's proposing to do now doable before the election?
Well, he tweeted one day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and at 3:30, the speaker was slated to meet with Treasury Secretary Mnuchin. They've had a good rapport and an ability to cut deals in the past. We need a deal now like never before because the urgent needs of the people of the Granite State are significant, and people across this country as well. We need support for those who are out of a job. We need help for our small business community, especially as they enter some really tough months here in the fall and winter months. We need direct support to state and local government, and we need to ensure that we're doing all we can for testing, treatment, and tracing. This is first and foremost a public health crisis, and if we can't address the virus and the pandemic, we're never going to get our economy back up on its feet. So we need a deal. If we can just get a few things over the finish line now, or say set the timetable through the end of this year and then have a new Congress and a new president pick up the baton in January, that's acceptable to me. I think whatever we can get across the finish line and do so in a bipartisan way is going to help. This is a time of great uncertainty, of great distress in our economy. We know that this economic recession is hitting lower income earners much harder than any economic recession that we've ever been through before. And so our efforts to provide relief and recovery are so essential to make sure that people can stay in their homes, meet basic household expenses, and ensure that we're strong as we confront this virus.
It appears the president is recovering well following his diagnosis with COVID-19, which is great news following that diagnosis and the trip to Walter Reed. But what did you think of him taking off his mask in such dramatic fashion following his return from the hospital? And other things he's said since then?
Well, we're all thinking of the president. We hope for his safety. We hope he's back to normal as quickly as possible. This virus is tough, and we need to treat it with the seriousness that it requires. Unfortunately, he has mismanaged the response to COVID-19 from the very beginning. He politicized the use of mask wearing. He hid facts from the American people, including that this virus could be transmitted by the air. And we need to do all we can to be leaning on our public health community, our scientists, and making sure that we're giving people the right messages about how they can keep themselves safe. We saw an event not too long ago that really was a super spreader event. As the new Supreme Court nominee was announced, you had lots of people not wearing masks, not social distancing, and a lot of people got sick as a result. We need to be modeling good behavior, and the president and leaders in Congress should take that responsibility upon themselves to communicate those powerful public health messages to constituents. Unfortunately, my opponent in this race, Matt Mowers, has not distanced himself from the administration, has not criticized the administration's response. We need better. And it didn't have to be like this. We've lost 215,000 Americans, almost 450 here in the Granite State. We're the only country in the world who is struggling to overcome this virus and to get back to normal. We've got to do all we can to get the numbers low so we can get moving again.
You mentioned the Supreme Court. The expected swing in the balance of power on the highest court in the land means that there are a lot of issues that could be coming back to Congress in the next 2 years and beyond that. What's your plan, though, if the court overturns Roe v. Wade?
We don't want to see that happen. And I'm the only candidate in this race that is pro-choice, that supports a woman's right to choose. And I believe that we should put Roe versus Wade, the law of the land, in statute to make sure that we're protecting that fundamental right. No politician, whether it's Matt Mowers, Donald Trump, or anyone in Washington, should be getting in the way of a patient's ability or a woman's ability to make decisions and understand what health options are available to them. So that's absolutely crucial moving forward. But look, I think we're rushing headlong into a nomination of a Supreme Court justice at a time when the Senate can't even get their basic duties done. They won't take up a COVID relief package, even though we passed one again last week in the House. They haven't dealt with issues like appropriations, the National Defense Authorization. There is so much important business that is left on the table. And to rush into this before the people have had their say is really just demonstrative of the fact that it's being done to take away a woman's right to choose and to take away health care from tens of millions of Americans. This is part of the effort to kill the Affordable Care Act altogether. But we know that the health and safety of Granite Staters has never been more important, especially during this pandemic. So we can't afford to let that happen. And I'm going to be willing to respond to make sure that we're supporting access to health care and making sure that it's a right and not a privilege in the next term, regardless of what the Supreme Court does.
If the Democrats are able to take back the Senate and the White House, some progressives are calling for future President Biden to add Supreme Court justices, and Mr. Biden has pointedly declined to take a position on that, saying, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do about the court until after the election. What about you? Would you support any effort to, quote unquote, pack the Supreme Court?
That's not something I support. What I support is electing a representative in this district that is going to represent the best interests of the people of New Hampshire, someone who doesn't stand with a special interest, but stands for health care access, lower prescription drug prices, a woman's right to choose, LGBTQ equality, the things that could hang in the balance with a nomination of a conservative justice to the court. So we've got to make sure that we have a representative who's on the side of the people of New Hampshire. I've been fighting for these things during my time in Washington. I'll continue to be a voice for healthcare access and so many other crucial issues that might hang in the balance depending on where this nomination goes.
One of the big points of contention in this CD1 race has been law enforcement reform. You voted to strip police officers of their qualified immunity from civil lawsuits. There's widespread agreement that bad cops need to be held accountable. But if qualified immunity is gone, how will you propose to protect good police officers from a potential avalanche of lawsuits from criminals and willing defense attorneys who want to target them and essentially bankrupt them out of police work?
Well, I think we have to recognize that we should be doing all we can to support law enforcement, to support public safety, and we can do that while supporting justice for all in this country and addressing issues of racial inequality. I've been willing to do that and have those hard conversations with folks across New Hampshire, and we've got to find a path forward for legislation that can bring people together and truly improve outcomes. And no one wants that more than law enforcement. That's why I've introduced legislation that looks to improve professionalism and institute best practices through expanding accreditation grants to local police departments. That's something that can really help. But on that particular issue, look, this is an issue that really lives in the courts right now. And I think we need to think about how we statutize it in a way that ensures that no one's civil rights are violated with impunity, but also that law enforcement officials who are just doing their jobs, who are following their training, aren't subject to frivolous lawsuits. So I think we can have a balanced approach as we move forward that looks to protect public safety and does all we can to address the inequities that exist in our society. We're having some good conversations here in New Hampshire. So let's collectively see what can work and what can truly make a difference. And I'm all in on that conversation, and we'll continue to do and fight for funding for law enforcement. One of the flashpoints in this campaign is the fact that I'm the only candidate who's standing up to provide funding to our cities and towns who are losing revenue right now. That's so we can protect the jobs of our police officers, firefighters, teachers, and those who might be on the line if budget cuts are made locally. We want to prevent that. That's why COVID relief is important and why local funding is so important to ensure that we don't backtrack on our obligations in the middle of this pandemic.
Qualified immunity is gone, and there's no protection for those good officers in terms of frivolous lawsuits. How are they even going to pay their legal bills?
Well, it's not gone, and I think this is part of a broader conversation about where we can go. Right now, we have seen the Senate not act as in response to the House passing the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. So I think we've got to, make sure we're having the conversations that can produce results. It's got to happen in a bipartisan way. It's got to happen at all levels of government. And we can't just put everything on the policing conversation either. There are inequities in education, in healthcare, in so many other places across our society. So talking about racial justice is really an all-encompassing conversation that needs to involve all of us. We all have to be willing to do what it takes to make sure we truly live up to the values of our founding in this country.
As we wrap up here, $1.83 million in the CARES Act for affordable housing in New Hampshire, vouchers to help the most needy people keep a roof over their heads in this difficult time. Feels like the pandemic has made a bad situation worse here. I know Congress isn't solely responsible for this. There's a lot of local stuff that has to go on. But what is Congress going to do to make housing more affordable in New Hampshire?
Well, we have long had an affordable housing crunch in New Hampshire. We had about a 1% vacancy rate before COVID. It's probably worse now when 5 to 7% is what is ideal. So we don't have the housing stock. Prices are too high. And at a time when a record number of people are out of work, especially our working families who are bearing the brunt of this recession, that's problematic. So a moratorium is one thing. The CDC instituted one. We really should put that into law to make sure we're not seeing people evicted or foreclosed on during this pandemic because of the COVID pandemic. But what we do need to provide is some supplemental support. So the HEROES Act we passed last week had a $50 billion fund to states to provide rental assistance. That's good for the renters, it's good for the utilities, it's good for the landlords, and good for our economy. There's also $21 billion in mortgage assistance so folks can continue to pay their mortgage on time, even if they're experiencing financial hardship. We really have to look at the needs of our working families right now to make sure people can meet basic household expenses. And I'm worried about what that picture looks like as we move forward. So housing has got to be front and center. What I've heard from some of our social service agencies and some of our homeless shelters is they're seeing new people they've never seen before. So people are losing their homes and being displaced right now. And we can't let this become a crisis. And we've got to focus on affordability, how we keep people in place, and then have the long-term conversation about how we increase our affordable housing stock and work at all levels of government to make sure that good housing policy is in place and that the federal government is providing the right incentives to bring that about.
All right, Congressman Pappas, thanks for joining us on Close Up.
Thanks, Adam. Take care.